Welcome to episode 87 of the Clarity Compressed podcast. My name is Paul J. Daly, and this week we're going to talk about why all relationships, and I mean all of them, eventually break. Clarity can only really exist in the light of truth. Branding just isn't a tactic. It's a lifestyle change. Okay, this week's moment of clarity really does tie in with the overarching podcast episode. And the moment of clarity is that the work in any good relationship is never done. If you get comfortable and you think the relationship is good and the work there is done, well, then you're on your way to a bad relationship. So whatever relationships you're in today, think if I value this relationship, that the work is never done. That's my moment of clarity today.
I'm so excited for what he's gonna show me. Hurry up and show me Paul's baby.
Okay, so my pick last week was my full busy desk and a crowded desk. My pick this week is the opposite. It's an empty and a clean desk. Because after we cleared everything out for the shoot this week, I realized that I feel a lot better and more free now that there's nothing on my desk. It's actually freed me up to think a little bit clearer and get some fresh thinking. So last week, the full desk. This week, it's the empty desk. I guess the point is, never do the same thing, like keep it fresh. That's my pick for the week. Okay, so it has been a crazy week, and if you're watching the podcast versus listening, you see that the background and the set that I'm on, it's familiar. It's my office, actually, but this set is the second set in a shoot that we've been doing. We've scripted and we filmed. We filmed all week. We scripted for the last number of weeks, and we're releasing a new digital workshop coming up called Brand is Gravity. And it really is the culmination of all the work that I've been doing, that the agency Congruent has been doing. I wanted a way that we could promote the principles of branding and the principles of connection in a transferable way that could bring more people in on the message, because I think that building better brand connection actually makes the world better. So that's why the set is different. That's why I'm excited today, and just in general. I know I'm kind of easily excitable. But today, all the brand conversations and all the scripts and all the shooting videos has me thinking about why all relationships eventually break. So all relationships eventually break because people change over time. They start with getting one another's attention, right? And we're talking in various categories. Again, this applies to romantic relationships. It applies to work relationships and coworkers, mentor-mentee relationships. It applies to friendships. It also applies to, like I said, business to consumer businesses, relationships there, or B2B relationships. And if you've been paying attention, you realize that I'm starting to use the language business to human. So every relationship starts with some level of attention. So one party gets the attention of another party. And in romantic relationships, a lot of times it's because of appearance, and then charisma, or something they've heard, or a story they heard about a person, and it gets your attention and it starts to build interest. In work relationships, you might be working on projects together. There's some kind of career development involvement. And so they start with attention. There's some inciting incident that gets attention. And then they begin to learn one another. You learn about the traits, and everybody's on their best behavior. But still, you start to learn about one another, preferences and good points and bad points. But either way, you start to figure out what drives you, and that either kind of gets you to cancel the relationship, or you keep going deeper. And at some point, you connect. And you walk, and everyone's got these kind of expectations, and the relationship goes forward. But you know what? And it happens in all relationships. People change. Life changes. Situations change. And because that happens, well, then the needs also begin to change. And the needs that were maybe once fulfilled by the romantic relationship or the friendship or the coworker or the business product or the service, well, maybe the need is different. And now things get a little different. And this is why at some point, what worked over time and what kind of the way your relationship functioned over time, well, it no longer works. I want to tell you that that's okay. It's okay. Change is okay. It's gonna break at some point because life changes and people change. And why the breaking point happens with change is because there's always this level of expectation in relationship. As we develop a relationship, it's based on the expectation that you're going to behave like you did in the beginning as we walk through the relationship and it developed. And then when one party changes, the expectations get broken and a little bit of distance starts to happen. And that really is a critical point in relationships, because the point of making the title of this podcast that why all relationships eventually break, it isn't why all relationships will eventually be broken. No, when things break, what happens? Well, we fix them. Options at that point, right? Like you could get bitter that something has changed and disconnect, right? Or you could lean in and try to empathize and try to understand what has gone wrong. And was it you that changed? Because a lot of the times, if you're not self-aware, or even if you are self-aware, but in this moment you don't realize it, maybe you've changed. Maybe the other person has changed. But either way, doing the work to find out what has changed is really the first step to restoring the relationship. And like I said, it's not a bad thing, because a lot of times when things change, like they're for the better. I know as humans, we resist change and we are afraid of change, but a lot of times like things that weren't quite healthy in the beginning, or they change, like gives us the opportunity to like change for the better. So this is where you pay attention, you find out what changed, and then you find out how does this change make the other person feel? And this is like we talk about a lot. This is empathy, understanding how you feel so that I can try to come alongside and meet the need. Unfortunately, I see a lot of businesses not doing the work to understand why things are changing, except they kind of blame the new situation. Like, oh, well, if customers are like either canceling or not buying anymore, I see a lot of businesses blame the customer and say, well, they must not get it, or they just don't like that, or they're really picky. And the truth is, at one point you had a good relationship. You were doing business with one another. There was something that attracted you to each other and you connected. And then all of a sudden they wander and the business is like, oh, they must have changed. Well, like, yes, they did change. And if you're in business, know that at some point in every good customer relationship, the relationship's going to break. And that's the chance when you lean in and you say, why did it break? Did we change or did the customer change? And then how can we understand what change happened so that we can then restore the relationship? Because the point of business is staying connected. And so like relationships breaking are really a natural part of life. What are you doing to make sure that when they break, that you lean in and don't push away and don't deflect and don't blame? Like, it's super important. So as relationships change, as things change, as the world change and situations and circumstances change, decide and think about right now, like, how can you lean in? How can you lean in and understand why they broke and do the work to like find the new normal in the relationship? Because I'll tell you what, it is a whole lot harder to find new relationships than it is to preserve and protect the ones that you already have. I'm excited you're here. I'm excited you're paying attention. I hope you have some great stuff going on. As usual, hit me up, DM me. Hope you have an awesome week. Hope you're doing it well. And all relationships break. Talk to you soon. Episode 87. We're out.
Way over town, that digs on me. She give me money.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger.